Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Hello and a very warm welcome to Weigh In. Plenty to get through as always on this evening's show. Of course, domestic action from Ellerslie and also Trentham on the weekend. We managed to sneak in a race from Wingatui as well. Not only that, but a New Zealand derby. Of course, Kukaracha taking out the Queensland derby in a clean sweep for New Zealand breds this year in Australia. Not only that, but the latter part of the show, Bernard Saundry joins us to talk all things industry related. And Michael Guerin, as we welcome you in, plenty to get through as always. How are we going to squeeze it all in?
We will try our absolute best, Emily. Big hi to everybody watching around the country. Hope you had a great weekend as well, Emily. Great to get Bernard in here today, get an update on NZTR, where things are heading with them. Exciting time in the industry, synthetic tracks now up and running. Obviously the merger potential in Auckland. And I want to also talk about jumps racing. I know a lot of people watching the show concerned about the future of jumps racing. I think Bernard will have some words which will allay those fears. Funny old weekend, it's Wintonarama, Em, and I sort of thought we'd see a wet track at Ellerslie on Saturday, but it was one of the better late autumn tracks I could really remember. So a real treat for us there, which was good because you sort of don't like to see the two-year-olds hacking around in the wet too much, and we managed to get a really good race for one of their last black types of the year.
We sure did. Dead conditions at Ellerslie on Saturday. And here's a look at Atuli Bajil taking out the Auckland Futurity Stakes.
Inside, and King Mondo comes out wider as they work towards a home turn. 450 metres to go. Pacemaker as Lasers Fury from Samarkand. Mila Perez out wider now into the clear Lady Marole. And here's Atuli Bajil chiming in down the outside. They've up across the track here. Atuli Bajil went to the lead from Lady Marole, who's in there with a fight here. 2.5 away. Then we've got looking to warm up late. There you go, out wide of Mustang Valley. But Atuli Bajil hit overdrive and dashed away with 150 to go. Shut the gate. Atuli Bajil too good. Lady Marole second. Third, there you go. And then followed over next by Mustang Valley. In behind those as they went across the line would have been...
Pretty impressive performance and was able to turn the tables on Lady Marole with what it did. Atuli Bajil really doing a demolition job of the two-year-olds there and putting together quite a nice record, Michael, with the 2 wins and its past 3 starts.
And I think he deserved it for Carl Henderson, who trains the horse, because we all know what happened in the Champagne Stakes. It was nobody's particular fault. He was leading the field and there were a couple of track attendants on the track and he got a bit of a shock and it probably cost him, not maybe the race, but maybe his absolute best chance. What I like about the horse is this. You compare his Champagne Stakes run, wet track and able to race on the speed. Here he comes back to a dry track, Emily, and able to race off the speed. Now, one-dimensional horses have a problem because they're easy to work out for the opposition. A horse who can do both things, he has a lot of options. So Carl's considering taking him to Victoria early in the spring. So, look, if you're going to go on a trip overseas and spend your 20 or 30 grand, it's a lot easier to do if you go, well, wet and dry, we'll handle both.
Yeah, very
We can
versatile.
go back, he has lots of options, and obviously he's a 2-year-old who can run 1600. So he's a horse who might have just snuck in at the back end of the season when a lot of people probably think juvenile racing isn't that strong. He's a horse who might have more options than maybe some of the horses we get to see this time of year. I thought the second horse was really good too. And the Pike horse, the third horse, gets black type first start of its career. So that's a huge bonus for anybody with a filly.
Yeah, it certainly is, and Atuli Bajil looks to have a good bit of maturing to do as well, so certainly might improve. Another race on the programme from Ellerslie that we wanted to highlight was the 6th, Princess Rihanna, successful in this one.
From Shoshone, closer in then we've got Speedy Meaty, followed by Burgundy Rose, Princess Rihanna. Further back next is Manrico, then Monaco. Out wide, Love Squirrels, and many chances here at the 250. Burgundy Rose has made the lead here. Out wide, coming down the extreme outside now is Monaco after them all. And through on the inside, through the centre, Princess Rihanna, Monaco, and diving at them, Cyber Attack, and play that song. Princess Rihanna, I reckon, just got there. From Monaco, photos for third, play that song. And with it also was Cyber Attack, Burgundy Rose.
A reasonably good day for Taiki Yanagiri. He got 2 of the 3 features on the programme, and for a minute there, Michael, I thought that this horse was going to be really unlucky because came across a number of heels and just kept on finding when he managed to get it out into the clear and ended up being a nice win.
For a horse who raced in some really serious summer races, like raced against the Entreviers of the world, I'm really surprised you got to $12.90, which isn't much fun for the punters who didn't back you. hearing that now, but she had performed in a better grade than many of these, and she was going to handle a track which was better than a winter track. Spoke to Andrew Scott, her co-trainer, about her. He said, look, the problem's she needs 11 to 1200. She can't go much further out, and there is a 1400 metre decent mares race just around the corner, but he said that's not our go. So probably going to park up on her till June the 19th, and then they'll go to either Ruakaka or Palmerston North and keep her as a sprinter. She's done a pretty good job. Just on Scotty and Lance O'Sullivan's team, Dragon Leap obviously had no joy in Queensland. He got a little bit sick before his expected race, and he's not going to race in Queensland, he's coming home. So he'll come home on the plane and they'll just start again, potentially the Triple Crown early type races coming out of Hastings for him. And Force of Will, who they took over there and had a really good record here. And things just didn't quite go her way in Australia. She's almost certain to stay there now. So owner's decision, she'll stay in Australia, race in those type of races. So horses like Princess Rihanna get bumped up a few notches because Spring Heat's also retired out of their stable. So they've lost a couple of pretty decent mares, but this is a mare who gets a toe into the ground okay. She might find another race she can win shortly. As Scotty said though, 11 to 1200, that's totally her range.
Yeah, exactly right. Race number 1 on the card was also an open handicap. Lily Thunder was successful in this one.
Mucktomb comes away from the rail to come out after those, and then out deeper now. Volativo looks to run on, as does Time to Celebrate out in the centre, and behind them Major Tom battles away. Now Lily Thunder being presented right down the outside across the track of the 200, and the leader is Money Trail over on the inside, coming after it, Time to Celebrate, and here's Lily Thunder starting to thunder home out wide. Lily Thunder from last on the corner has got up to take out the first on the card. Photos for second, Time to Celebrate and Money Trail. Then we had Photos as well, Double Happy. With it also was...
Well, settled right at the back of the field and was able to make up a substantial amount of ground after coming wide. And now a 5-time winner, Lily Thunder, putting together a tidy little record. And also a big shout out to one of my co-workers, Nicole Sims, who's involved in the ownership, and I'm sure a great thrill for her.
I had the chance to talk to Nicole's mum, Patsy Riley, today, and I can see where Nicole got her lovely bouncy personality from and her love of horses. Patsy absolutely loves her horses, and look, she was great telling it. They don't have a lot of horses in the stable. They're not having external horses coming in from other owners. They just love having their own horses to race with. They actually leased this mare, and the lease came up, and she said the owners were really good about it. They said, hey, look, you can buy the horse off us, which they wanted to do. Obviously, they have a broodmare to go on with in the future. She's 6 years old now. But Patsy said, look, we'll keep racing here. We're going to enjoy it for what it is. There's Nicole, who of course is well known to all the trackside viewers, and a hell of a nice young lady who's doing a really good job in a tough industry. So I'm really thrilled to see her get a win at Ellerslie. Good weekend for Delgar, sorry. He had a couple of winners, so he's one of those stallions who sort of bubbles under the surface a little bit. If you didn't know that horse, Em, you would have looked at that win and gone, this thing might have a future. Like last at Ellerslie, won pretty convincingly. So Patsy's suggesting she'll go to Tarapa for a 1600 either this week or the week after, I think it is. So, yeah, probably a horse who, because she can get a toe into the ground, maybe has a bit more upside than maybe her reputation would suggest.
Yeah, certainly enjoys this time of year, does Lily Thunder, and no doubt we'll be seeing her back in the winners' enclosure soon. We head down to Trentham next as we take in Collins Street, successful at Trentham in race number 2.
North Island Challenge Stakes, and here Majuro. Platinum Wrapper over on the outside. Collins Street over on the insides, away in and out. Charlie Horse behind these, and Dolcetto trying to get to the outside. Still Majuro at the 250 metres. There's no Rosewood here. Collins Street tries to get through on the inside. Wide out then. Charlie Horse, Majuro kept up to the mark here. And now Collins Street's going to have one last shot at it over on the outside. Majuro, Collins Street will get it right on the line. Collins Street the prize. Majuro and then Dolcetto, who took a day to warm up. Behind these runners, Charlie Horse and Platinum Wrapper. And no Rosewood today. She was the last by a margin.
I really didn't think Collins Street was going to get there, Michael. I thought the leader was home and hosed, and about that 250 metre mark when Callum Jones elected to pull Collins Street out, just kept finding, and I thought must be a weight difference, must be the claim, but then when I looked at that, there was just a kilo between them, so really a credible performance.
We had Nigel Tiley on the show a couple of weeks ago, and he said to us, look out for Callum Jones, because Callum obviously was apprenticed to Nigel. He has gone on loan to Alan Sharrock, so for the next 3 months he'll be riding down there, and with that claim he gets, Nigel's words coming to the fore. That was a beautifully timed winning ride. Collins Street's a nice horse. Alan Sherrick I spoke to today is looking to take it to Awapuni in a couple of weeks' time. But there's obviously a week for Alan Sherrick. What happened was Alan had 2 horses return positives to methamphetamine. Clearly, he wasn't involved in putting any methamphetamine in their system. It was found out by the RIU that it was contamination of a stabling block at Awapuni on Anzac Day, so nothing to do with Alan. Alan said, look, this concerns him. He was relieved that obviously there was no charges against him and they've been proven to be non-existent. But as he said, the owners lose the race. And I'm not sure what you do about that. I'm not sure. You can't lock up every racetrack in the country. If there's going to be people dumb enough to be taking pee, then they're probably going to wander into some places they shouldn't be. But it does raise that concern. Now, they still lose the race. The owners still lose the race. And Alan was saying to me, do we get recompensated for that? And obviously they don't. So, a really tricky one because I feel for the owners and Alan was really feeling for them too. So, he was relieved that clearly he was proven to have done nothing wrong, but tricky thing to get over. And I don't really know how you secure against that. Racetracks are very open places, they're very porous. There's no way you can shut all the racetracks in the country, Emily. And we all know pee is a horrible, horrible thing. And if it's going to be part of our society, it's not the first time it's happened. It happened in a harness racing positive swab a couple of years ago too. So Alan, even though he was in a good mood about Collins Street and said this is a pretty good horse, and he was really complimentary to Callum Jones, you could tell it irked him that his owners, who he loves, the fact that these people have horses with him, weren't going to get that money back. How you fix that, I do not know.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention out of that race was King of Comedy standing at Novara Park, who sponsored the race, which is a new addition to our stallion ranks. A son of Kingman, we know what he's achieved in Europe. He's got a great pedigree and he was a good racehorse. And Novara Park, of course, just having a wonderful run of things with Only Words being by Swain S and also Signora Nera. And of course, they bred Explosive Jack as well. So big shout out to Luigi Mulo and what he's achieving.
Well, it was looking like we were only going to have like 1 new stallion coming to the country, and now there's like 3 or 4. And that's really important because we actually had some really big names pass away in the last couple of years. So
Circus Maximus for Windsor
yeah,
Park
exactly.
Stakes.
And he's a lovely looking, really strong looking, leggy type horse as well. So it's a big risk for anybody to bring a horse into the country, and I respect anybody who does it. So I hope they have the best of success with King of Comedy.
Yeah, absolutely. Wingatui race number 6, Pull Your Socks Up from Friday. Let's have a little look at that.
Rania the centre, the inside, the Growler from Raise You 10, Hunter Villain and Last Killarney, Homeward Bound. King Cougar Pop, the question of length, Pull Your Socks Up the centre of the track, coming after them. Good Anya threading through, followed by He's Got Power. It's Pull Your Socks Up, moving up to August Ace. Good Anya coming through in the centre, the Growler up against the inside. Pull Your Socks Up, out of the centre of the track though for Courtney Barnes. Well, she was pulling ahead off all race, but she'll drive her to the post and get the money to beat the Growler, and third in was Good Anya. Fourth, August Ace, further back, Raise You 10. He's Got Power from Hunterville and Miara.
Yeah, raced pretty fiercely in running, did the Go Racing owned horse Pull Your Socks Up, but normally they're not able to finish it off after doing that, Michael, but this horse burned the candle at both ends and was able to get up to a good win and was pretty strong on the line.
So many unusual parts to the story. A Stephen McKee trained horse winning at Wingatui. Spoke to Sticks today. He said, I don't think we've had one down there. Doesn't mean it's not true. He's probably forgotten about it. He said, a lot of credit goes to Andrew Carson to be looking after this horse, and obviously Andrew does a lot of the Go Racing work as well. Weird story, the horse was actually accepted for the broodmare sale on the Gold Coast last week. Now, if you've ever been to the Gold Coast and you've been to Wingatui, you would know they're very different places at this time of year. And they decided not to sell her. The Go Racing boys are going to press on for another year. She does have black type. She finished third in the Uncle Remus as a 3-year-old to Hypnos. So then she was down at Riccarton trying to get more black type and it didn't work out. And then she was heading to Trentham last week, but on a nomination start was a heavy 11. So Sticks said, well, we're not going to go there. Let's go somewhere else. And it's happened to be Wingatui. So it was a bizarre story how she ended up in the first place.
Worked out well, whatever.
Exactly. So she could have been last week on the Gold Coast. She could have been in Wellington or she could have been at Wingatui. As it turned out, she was at Wingatui, won a race, and by tomorrow she'll be in Cambridge, where she's heading for a spell. They're going to bring her back and race her next season. But she does have black type, so
valuable.
We'll tell you, she's not the richest bred horse in the world, but at the moment she's a pretty good racehorse. And Stephen said she's so big and she has enough scope. I still think there's a couple more in her, but yes, I'm not entirely sure they haven't had a horse race at Wingatui before, but Stephen couldn't remember which one it was.
Well, there you go. Let's have a look at the trainers and jockeys premiership, and we'll just have a little look here. Jamie Richards on 156 wins, leading that premiership, followed by Stephen Marsh and the Pitmans. If we head over to the jockeys premiership and look, taking in that, the girls dominating, Danielle and Sam Collett, the top two. Sam Collett on 84, she of course heading across the ditch to Queensland for the latter part of the season. Hazel Chauffeur there in the jockeys premiership, but also want to talk about her in the apprentice jockeys premiership race, which has got pretty exciting.
Well, it has, and had Cozzy not got injured in that recent fall where he broke his collarbone, you would think it'd be one of the battles left in the season because there's not many in the premierships left, but Hazel's now got 4 on him. It's really hard to imagine Cozzy's going to come back and ride 4 or 5 in the last month, because Hazel, you would suggest, is probably going to keep on winning. She's about to go past $1 million for the season, so she's been one of the stories of the season, Hazel Chauffeur. Absolutely no doubts. Like a year ago, if you'd said to people, name 50 jockeys in the country who are going to get $1 million in winners, outside Mrs. and Mr. Chauffeur, I don't think many people would have said Hazel Chauffeur.
I did an interview with her actually last week for the podcast I do for Westbury Stud. She's a really smart girl. She's got goals. She's got ambitions. It was really interesting to get to know her a little bit better. And
How do people have a listen to that podcast?
Westbury Stud website. You can find it on there. I've interviewed lots of very interesting people throughout the year, all based in the industry. You have a listen, Michael, you might learn something.
Well, that'd be good. It'd be nice to learn something for you for once, Emily. She's going to win the amateur, the outside apprentice jockeys.
Oh, Michael.
She won't do the amateurs, no. So I was just talking to you and I was thinking about amateur stuff.
That was a good one. I'll let you have that one. That was epic.
Honestly, I'm quite happy with that. That's quite good.
Yeah, that was good. That's play of the night so
Yeah.
far. Well done, Michael. 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. We'll get you to a break and we leave you with Rote's first winner. Congratulations to the team on this.
Looking for an out now, Sarah McNambers. They're about to swing and go, and Eupolia goes the inside. Here it is, Spider-Puss to the 300 metres is the leader now. And Spider-Puss from Eagle County, who's starting to get alongside. Old Town Road coming after them. And We Dance has got a bit to do. And Express Desire starting to put in as well. Across the track here, they get down inside the 100 metres here. Express Desire and We Danced is after it. Whoa! I think it's got there, but I don't know. Right on the line, I wasn't sure of the rail out here. So it's And We Dance, Express Desire, a huge effort. Spider-Puss, Old Town Road, right with those. And then we had Eupolia. Back behind them was Eagle County, Pink Champagne, Ganchero, Deny, Vin Rouge, Darcy's Flight, and Aurora Star.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Welcome back into Weigh-In, and before we get into our Australian action, we couldn't help but talk about that Gold Coast Broodmare sale last week, where our star mare Melody Bell went through the ring, securing what could have been the top lot, Michael, in a pretty dramatic event, but awesome to see. She's going to head down to Victoria, Yulong Farms, and be covered by Written Tycoon, which I'm a big fan of his, so that's a great meeting.
Yeah, and they were really busy last week, the Written Tycoon Syndicate, buying a whole lot of mares. Not many you paid $2.6 million for. So I think it was in the slot for where most people saw us, somewhere between 2.4 to 3.2, depending on who you asked. It's a lot of money. David Ellis and the team at Tiaka were willing to go to $2 million for her, so they were going to buy it back if they could at that price, because they could have syndicated her to breed from. But she's going to have a pretty auspicious career. She's never going to go to a cheap stallion, we know that much. Heads to Victoria, which is probably almost everybody would have thought she would head up in the Hunter Valley, because that's where the power base is in Sydney, but Victoria's kicked a major goal in getting him back there, Written Tycoon, so he was incredibly popular at the weanling sales over there as well. So a lot of people will think, well, how does this affect us? It doesn't really affect my life, but it is comforting when you see her and Volpe Veloce go for 1.9 million, Italy and Folder, I Am Invincible, and Bonham, who's still a very young horse.
She made massive money too.
Yeah, at 1.6 million. So it's comforting that you know that people aren't looking at the New Zealand form and going, I don't really, that doesn't interest me. Like Bonham's totally sight unseen in Australia. at 1.6.
And a very, by Per Encanto, it's a New Zealand-based sire. It's got a real Kiwi feel to it.
I totally agree. So, and then obviously Per Encanto also had a $500,000 weanling last week. So those things are really good for the industry here, because that sale may not be a sale we have a lot of horses at, but it's another option. I'm not saying people should sell there. I mean, I would love to see every horse who ever raced in New Zealand sold at Karaka. That's what I would love to see, but that's probably not going to happen. And it's not my decision to make. But at least it's showing us that if you're going to go to Karaka and pay $200,000 for a filly, you want to know that if you choose to get out of them, there's that end game possible. That's what you want to know. And you want that to be that the New Zealand form's still relevant. And I think it showed, because most of Melody Bell's main form's in New Zealand. She's still well known in Australia. But definitely with Bonham, that New Zealand form was respected. So I think it was a really positive sale for us, even though, as I said, we would love to see a lot more of those mares retained here to be bred from.
Well, some wonderful purchases coming back to New Zealand as well from some of our major studs, including Cambridge, Windsor Park. Bruce Perry also very active at that sale. We go on to some really important news for the industry with a Queensland Derby victory for Kukaracha, who was successful taking out the Queensland Derby in emphatic fashion.
Fourth, Achiever working into the clear. Sagacious further back. Explosive Jack's got 5 lengths to make up. One from the outside there. Working home is Mr. G. And Senor Tabor down the outside. Achiever is the leader. Explosive Jack switching back towards the inside. Senor Tabor finished in strongly. Kukaracha as well. Kukaracha, Senor Tabor, Explosive Jack, Kukaracha, Senor Tabor, Kukaracha, Senor Tabor. They hit the line. Kukaracha. I think Kukaracha's won the Derby, and not Senor Tabor in a photo. Not sure third. Explosive Jack, or up there was Achiever.
Goodness me, it was an exciting edition of the race, and they went right down to the wire, those two. A couple of talking points, because one of our best expat jockeys, James McDonald, securing another Group 1 victory at such a young age. And also from a Kiwi perspective, it was a Derby clean sweep. New Zealand breds have won all 6 Derbies in Australia this season. Ironically, the New Zealand Derby won by an Australian. But also another really interesting statistic, Michael, 22.5% of all Group 1 races in Australia have been won by New Zealand bred horses. That's from 7.2% of runners. So punching well above our weight, as we know we do. And we get another Derby victory in a real Kiwi flavour. Chris Waller, James McDonald, purchased by Guy Mulcaster. A great advert for our product. And the sire of this horse, Night of Thunder, is a really interesting stallion. He's a little bit of a sort of secret jewel from Europe. He's best first crop sire in the 50-year history of European pattern racing. So he really offers something, and great for Dr. Chris Phillips from Waikato Stud. I saw him on Saturday there, and he was over the moon. He could barely talk. He was so excited, and so he should be.
Well, it's a hard thing to do, to go buy these mares when they were in foal and bring them home, and it can be disastrous, and he dabbles in that, and he's dabbled pretty well now.
And he's got a lot of the family too, so he's very excited about that as well.
Well, look, it's been remarkable that we've been able to win all those derbies, because that's our slot. I talk about it a lot. We're not going to win Magic Millions, and we're not going to win Golden Slippers probably for a while. And it's getting harder to win the big cups, because while we did that for a long time, the Europeans are filling those up so quickly. So that slot of, when you meet people at Karaka from Australia, that's what they talk about. We want to buy a Guineas horse, we want to buy a Derby and Oaks horse.
Well, we're proving you can do that.
Exactly,
yeah.
and if we keep winning those people keep coming back to Karaka. Now, they also might buy a Karaka Million horse, or they might buy something else, or they might buy a miler like Colding, or all the other horses we have who are good horses. But that, if we don't get this right, it's really hard to get them here. And that's what we're still doing, and winning all the derbies. I mean, the team at New Zealand Bloodstock should be really thought about that, because that's the best advertisement for them. So we've just got to continue doing it now. And when you've got people like Chris Peters investing their own money and bringing those horses home, it's a big gamble, and doing that stuff, that's another piece of our industry.
And a really important thing too is out of all of those runners on Saturday in the Queensland Derby that were Kiwi bred, the most expensive purchase was Toscanini. I think he was $270,000. The rest of them were around that $100,000 mark. You're not having to spend a fortune to secure yourself a really, really good stay out.
Well, if you go to the Easter sale in Sydney, you can probably buy a sandwich and a can of Coke for $270 grand. It's just so expensive.
Geez, I hope they had a bloody yummy sandwich.
It's just so expensive to buy horses there. So it works for what we do. And yes, we would love to have more buzzing 2-year-olds come out, but we produce some pretty good ones of those as well. So, and let's not forget, we have had, Savabeel leave, an Epsom winner this year. So we're still producing those type of horses, but this is what we're supposed to be good at. And if we're good at it, people keep coming back. I've got absolutely no doubts. Karaka next January will be huge. When you're over there talking to the Aussies about it, they want to come back. And the sales industry is very buoyant at the moment. We took a kick this year because obviously we couldn't have the Australians or our friends from Asia there.
I don't think we took as big a kick as we could have.
No,
I think
exactly
it was
right.
surprisingly
And
buoyant.
I reckon the bounce back's going to be pretty apparent. When you're over there talking to people on the ground, they just want to come back to New Zealand. They want to come back here. They're well looked after by New Zealand Plus. Like, they want to be here, and God willing, they will be.
There was also the Lord Mayor's Cup on that programme from Brisbane, and we want to have a little look at that because there was a couple of Kiwis in it. Reloaded was successful. Tiptronic and Two Illicit also key horses, including Quick Thinker.
Reloaded further back on the field, Two Illicit. The Candyman is back nearer the inside. Lumien's one from the outside, and Vanagirl is the deepest. And So You Win weaving through as well. Taking over here is Reloaded. Homesman tries to go with Reloaded. Vanagirl running home. The Candyman laid over on the inside. So You Win. Reloaded the leader from Homesman. So You Win. Vanagirl and the Candyman. Reloaded's in front near the line and kept going. Reloaded the winner from So You Win. Photo third. Homesman, the Candyman, Vanagirl, not sure.
It was a victory for Reloaded, So You Win finishing in second, who is a produce of New Zealand. And out of those Kiwi runners, Two Illicit probably going the best. I'll be honest with you, Michael, on Saturday, it was really firm at Eagle Farm. And I think it just found out a couple of those Kiwis, Quick Thinker and Tiptronic, were that. It's just really firm there, and I just don't think it suits our style of horse.
Yeah, well, Quick Thinker, absolute no on a firm track. So they want to go to the Q22 with them next time out. That means taking on Zaki. So not much has gone right for this campaign for him since he won the Chairman's, obviously. Tiptronic had an atrial fibrillation, so that's why he stopped so badly. So that happens to all sorts of horses all the time. Bad time to have it happen, but they tend to recover from it pretty quickly, most of them. And Two Illicits, I thought there was enough there to suggest she might be able to sneak a race over there, but it's actually winter starts tomorrow, and it has been let's be honest about it, it's been the autumn of the arse kicking. We have had our arse kicked in every state of Australia. We had Lanacord go to South Australia and do a pretty good job. We had a couple of really unlucky horses in Probabeel and Entreville in Sydney. But nothing's gone right for us anywhere. And we're about to see not an option race in the Fred Best. And again, nothing went right. It's just been the most incredible autumn when you consider one New Zealand trained horse has won a feature race. Now here's not an option. He's in the middle of the pack there in the Cambridge Stud colours. And this is an upset as Ayrton gets beat in the Fred Best. But it's been lacklustre, and it's not because our horses aren't good enough. We know that we've had horses like Probabeel winning Epsons. We know we've had horses like Entreville who should have won in Sydney. We've got plenty of horses that are good enough, but often, Neem, I think our horses are going to the end of campaigns. They're running into very, very good horses. They're running into patterns of racing they're not used to. It's just been an icky time for us. Don't get me wrong, we've had Aegon also go over there and win a Hobartville, so we've got the horse flesh. It just hasn't happened for us this autumn. And I would say in the history of New Zealand racing, I doubt there's been a more fruitless autumn for our horses. Again, not because the horses aren't good enough, it just hasn't happened for us in the last 3 months.
Yeah, I guess you're probably right, but I think that's the nature of Australian racing. It's so competitive, everything has to go right in order to win, and that's just the luck of the draw. But Kiwi Breds are still performing and still doing the job.
And economically, that's just as important. I mean, economically, that's what we base the industry on. As again, it's not because the horses aren't good enough. Probabeel, Entreville, Amaralina, if she's peaked, all these horses can win races over there. But we also have to be realistic because there's no money in being parochial. We have got our butts kicked for the last 3 months. Doesn't mean we won't have a Cox Plate winner in October. Just been one of those runs, and we've been through it. And you have a horse like Dragon Leap gets across, he doesn't even get a race, and it's disheartening for you. But as I said,
that's horses.
It is. That's the nature of the beast.
No Compromise certainly didn't get his butt kicked. He was a successful winner at Rose Hill. Tommy Berry doing the riding on him, formerly with Bill Thurlow.
Lays it down to Maid of Ore. They're two clear from Skyhorse, Stockman and No Compromise. The two favourites coming into the race to fight it out now. And it's No Compromise and Stockman getting to the front. 200 metres to run. No Compromise gets ahead in front to Stockman. They're well clear from Brown Thomas going to third, but No Compromise push right out, going home best from Stockman, and No Compromise in a hard-fought battle, won it by a half length to staying test.
Formerly based here in New Zealand, no compromise now across the ditch with Chris Waller, and did get a well-deserved win. Had run well prior to this in Australia and cemented things with a victory. And I think whilst things are still going well, he's going to stay over there. And if he didn't end up going so well, he's able to come back to New Zealand. So a great day for Bill, and good to see him doing the job.
Good to see his colours there too. It's a real buzz if you can see your colours win on one of those big metro tracks over there. Raced at Ellerslie about a month ago, and a lot of people probably ran third. People probably thought, oh, yeah, this is just another nice staying horse. But I think that's a really nice slot for some of our horses, are those 2000, 24 staying races in Sydney. I don't think they're very strong, usually, Emily, unless you get the really good Europeans coming into them.
And you're targeting them at the right time of year when
Exactly
the
right.
best horses are moving away.
I was talking to Sean Ritchie about it 2 weeks ago when he had the Rotorua Cup winner. I spoke to Alan Sharrock about it today. He said, we saw that because other trainers watch it and go, hey, maybe we should have a crack at this. And I think those hit and run missions are going to be really relevant for people. Take Polly Gray, for example. Polly Gray's a horse we probably wouldn't have thought would do the job it's done over there, and it's won a lot of money. So again, it's not that our horses aren't good enough, it's just the big carnivals are so hard to target because you're getting Europeans and all sorts of Australian horses there. And I just think the carnivals go deeper into the year than they used to, Emily. Like we used to sometimes get through Sydney after the championships, and about 2 or 3 years ago, Queensland was quite weak. God, it's strong now. When you see Zaki, you go, wow, it's a no mucking around carnival, so it's harder to find those kills along the way.
We're going to head off to a break here on Way, and on the way to that, we were out at Waikato Stud a couple of weeks ago talking to Mark Chittick about Savabeel, and whilst we were there, we also found out a little bit more about Super Seth. Mark, it's Super Seth's second season. Tell me how he handled that first season of breeding.
Yeah, extremely well. He arrived at the stud still as a 3-year-old. And turned 4 and obviously went into his first season. He settled in incredibly well and just handled the season so well. And as I say, he was only 4. Most people realise, you know, his racing career was, I suppose, cut short due to COVID. We'd bought him as a stallion, would have loved to have raced him on and, you know, headed towards the Cox Plate, etc. But look, there was a period there that you know, none of us were sure whether he was going to be racing at all. So we made the decision to get him home and get him going, and he served an incredible book, handled it really well, settled in extremely well, and he's just an incredible horse to have around.
How many foals is he expected to have on the ground this year?
Well, he got around about 130 mares in foal. It was 130 in foal, so yeah, so good numbers, and the quality of his book was exceptional.
And you mentioned about him handling everything so well. That's a testament to his temperament, really, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, like he just settled in. He's just got an incredible personality, and he's just a lovely horse to do absolutely anything with. Whether it's this sort of stuff, whether it's in the breeding shed. You know, like if he was a human, he'd be a great mate and a great fellow to hang around with.
Well, you mentioned his racing career, and it's easy to forget what a devastating turn of foot he had.
Yeah, certainly, all the way through his racing career, right from his 2-year-old starts and wins. But obviously, the one that is the highlight of his whole career was beating Alligator Blood, who was unbeaten at that stage in the Caulfield Guineas. And you know, we make no secrets about it. We have to have a horse with a turn of foot. And you know, he gave him a massive head start that day and ran him down on the line. So time after time he proved that he had a massive turn of foot, and that's what we love in an athlete like himself.
In the Southern Hemisphere, the stallion game is very competitive. How lucky are we to have a horse like this in New Zealand? Yeah,
lucky, and you know, and buying these horses and taking these horses on. It's a big risk. It's a huge commitment. You know, there's no bones about it. And he was over a $15 million Australian purchase. So that is a massive commitment. But we have massive support around and purchasing these sorts of horses, and they are the sort of horses that work for us. You know, good race horses in Australia, good turn of foot. Lovely types. They're the horses that just make it. The likes of Savabeel and Ocean Park that are here and still with us now. They're the horses that work in this part of the world, and you know, we are breeders, let's say, in this part of the world, and most of their crop, most of their offspring will race in Australasia, and we just feel it's so important, and it's what our success has been based on, and he's got it all.
We're in late May. What does Super Seth get up to from here on into the breeding season?
So we're just, as you say, late May. The weather's changing a bit, getting a bit colder. So up until now, all of the boys have been out at night and spend most of the time out. But from shortly onwards, they'll start to be boxed at night, and they'll come in just after lunch, and their exercise regime will start from about the beginning of June. Treadmill exercise, and we like having them fit going into the season, and we've certainly found with bringing that into their daily routine leading into the season, they handle the season a lot better. And to be honest, I'd probably even go as far as saying that the success in getting mares in foal is probably more so off the back of all of these sorts of things. So he'll hit the season primed and ready to go. That's his time of the year now. That's his call it his Group 1 day, and it's I think it's 111 days. So he's got a bit to look forward to.
Today's weigh-in is brought to you by our stable of sponsors.
Well, at the start of the show, we promised you Bernard Saundry for the last segment, and he has joined us now. Bernard, a very warm welcome. Great to have you with us. A flying visit, I understand, back tomorrow morning early. Great to have you here in Auckland.
Thanks, Ellie, and thanks, Michael. It's great to be here, and we're at a really pivotal time for racing, and we've done some good things in the past, but we know we've got a lot more to do.
Before we get into the subjects, congratulations. You've become a grandfather.
Yeah. Congrats.
You feel a bit old when you say that, but yeah, my eldest daughter delivered a beautiful baby girl 4 weeks ago, so it's fantastic.
Beautiful. All care, no responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. You can hand them back. But she's beautiful, and I get an update every day, which is fantastic.
That's awesome. Last time I saw you at the Cambridge Synthetic Track, which obviously had its first meeting. We know Riccarton's underway. What's the progress with Awapuni?
Awapuni, we're finalising our designs, putting some contracts in place, and we're hoping that by October, November, we can put the shovel in the ground and start, which will complete 3 synthetic tracks in 3.5 years. Awapuni was targeted to finish the middle of next year. Riccarton finishes the end of this year, middle of this year. So we're really pleased that with the performance of Cambridge last week, the feedback from trainers and jockeys has been outstanding. I think it's a game changer for the industry, given we can see winter exceed 4, 5, 6 months in New Zealand. We need a surface that punters like and is good on the horse and produces good outcomes for punters.
Just a question on those tracks, Bernard. I had a message from our good friend Bruce Sherwin today, and he actually raised a question I hadn't thought of yet, is no synthetic track stats so far. We've only had one meeting, but still there's no actual stats. Is there plans, or are there plans, to have those included in the form lines, or in fact, isn't that your job, is it the TRB's job?
No, so that's a really good question. So we've got our on Love Racing website, we've got the synthetic stats, but we need to get that feed through the TAB. That's a work in progress.
Okay.
What else has been keeping you busy, Bernard? No doubt plenty of industry issues?
Plenty of industry issues. Well, it's all about money, isn't it? Obviously, the industry wants more money, and we've got multiple demands on our dollar, and how do we generate more income through wagering turnover? Clubs looking for more money. We need to spend money in infrastructure, education and training. So, for me, it's about how do we keep improving our racing, which can drive commercial returns for the industry.
One of the biggest commercial returns could be the merger of Ellerslie and Counties, and eventually Avondale joining them, not in a name merger, but in an asset merger. I take it that's music to the ears of NZTR if in fact it goes ahead?
It's just fantastic. The clubs are working together in the Auckland region, together with Avondale. The merger of Counties and Ellerslie will be another game changer for the industry. It's fantastic that people who around those committee tables can come together and make the decisions in the best interest of racing after they've consulted their members, which we've got to respect that. But the land assets in Auckland, we're really looking forward to making sure that those assets perform for the industry.
Are those sorts of mergers feasible around other parts of the country where, for example, outside of the Waikato, maybe the land assets aren't worth quite as much?
Yeah, so we've seen the Waikato clubs come together and start to talk about their future. Outside of a community club, I'm really encouraging clubs to work together in regions. We've seen down in the CD, There's no reason why we can't have a shared service in the CD. No longer can a club think they can operate on their own. Right?
Okay, so explain to me, what does shared service mean for people
your
watching this who don't
back
know what that
office,
is?
your race day officials, your finance, your IT.
So
your
using the
payroll.
same people to put the show together?
Yeah, and using same systems, back ends, and still having the club brand, conducting race meetings, and right up and down the country. We've got Auckland doing a great job. We've got the Waikato Club talking really well. We've got shared service models that we want to start to develop with the CD clubs. So all those activities drive efficiency and drive more revenue. I mean, that's pretty core to a business. You be efficient, we drive more revenue, and that's how you set up a proper structure.
We were looking at the Ellerslie track there. If this all goes through, it's going to become a Strathia track, which means jumps racing will disappear and so will the hill. Some people will hear that and will be scared about the future of jumps racing. I want to put it to you simply. Will jumps racing under NZTR's current mandate exist in this country in 5 years?
I want to see it continue in 5 years, yes. And
there's no plan to scarper it?
There's no plan to scarper it, but I will say we're at a very similar junction in time as we were in Victoria, where jumps racing came out of the VRC. We also had issues at Warrnambool, and ultimately it's up to the participants and the number of horses coming through the system. Right, so we want to help. We've got a meeting the middle of June to work through how do we continue to reshape, remodel jumps racing.
Who goes to a meeting like that?
We'll have the Johnny Wheelers, the Paul Nelsons, the Paul Claridges, and we'll talk to them about how do we continue to invigorate jumps racing. At a time of the year, we have to all acknowledge jumps racing provides something for all of us in the middle of winter and plays an important role for a whole lot of horses and participants.
I've spoken to a lot of people, Bernard, and two things. First of all, the horses we're seeing on screen here, without jumps racing, probably wouldn't have careers, so therefore have nowhere else to go. A lot of these jockeys, and some of our best track work riders and some of our best trials riders and people who break in horses, their love of racing is maintained through jumps racing. Not everybody can be under 60 kilograms. Don't you think we're obliged to even use it as a loss leader and say, okay, we're going to lose money on jumps racing because it keeps horses and people in the industry, and we need these, particularly at the moment when we're struggling to get overseas staff. Isn't it worth losing a bit of money on these?
Yes.
So it's going to continue?
It's going to continue.
We can still do that?
Yes, we can.
I had a conversation with a leading trainer recently who suggested to me a jump circuit every second Sunday, just using, for example, Te Araha. We head there, jumps racing, the Opies and the Leats of the world can have the day off because they're not going there. 3 or 4 jumps races, 3 or 4 high weight races, get all the jumps people together. Is there any merit to that? Is it possible that could happen?
I think it's a great idea. And how do we have jumps racing at particular venues? Do we reshape the footprint? What does it look like? And they're ideas that we need to put on the table.
Okay, so
to be honest, I think we need the industry to tell, and with NZTR working together on a reshaping of jumps racing to build a future. Because there's too much doubt in people's minds at the moment, so we have to do something better than what we're doing today.
It comes down to stakes, and you guys don't know what the stakes levels are going to be next season, NZTR that is, because you haven't been told by the TRB what the projected payouts are going to be. When do we start finding out those figures, and when are you and your board going to be in a position to tell us what stake levels are at least likely before clubs add what they want to add to them for next season?
So by the end of the month, we'll make an announcement. There will be stake money increases. We're just working through the final code, what I call the code funding agreement between the 3 codes of racing in New Zealand, and that negotiation is coming to an end now. I've got a meeting with the board on the 16th of June, and following the 17th of June, and following that meeting, we'll look to make an announcement on stakes.
What's your board's attitude? I know you don't get to make this decision yourself. What's your board's attitude to stakes? Is it let's top end and give people something to aspire to, or do we have to budge from the 10? Is that 10 that sticks in people's throats on a Wednesday afternoon? Do we have to budge that number higher?
Yeah, it's an interesting debate at the moment, because if you talk to a cross-section of industry participants, some would say put it at the top, others say put it in the middle.
What does your board want?
The board would like to see us support that mid-range, right? And at the same time, how do we keep building the top end? 3 years ago, the money went into the bottom end. Now we've got to think about how do we continue to, and what does the quantum look like? 53 million in prize money that was distributed this year. The number we're going to look, is it 60? Is it 63 million? There's an answer there somewhere, but that'll depend upon our final assumptions from TAB New Zealand, and I hope to have that before the board meeting on the 17th of June.
How's your relationship with TAB New Zealand? Because they are in a different role than they were 2 or 3 years ago, and their role is only to drive turnover, which means sometimes you don't get things you want. For example, presenters on track every Saturday because they don't think it's economically viable. So how is your relationship with that, both pushing and struggling for what you want?
I think what we've all got to remember, we've come out of COVID and there was a lot of changes made off the back of COVID, and we've seen some things taken away. We've seen some aspects of the business out of TAB they've transferred to the code. But when it comes to marketing and digital and that content space, we do have to, as an industry, sit down and reset the thing. We've got Love Racing, we've got Trackside, we've got TAB, we've got a new entity entering the market, SENZ. So how does Thoroughbred Racing take advantage of that? And we're going to pull those entities together in the next 6 weeks and see if we can build a more efficient outcome.
Interesting, we had Dean McKenzie here a few weeks ago, and the TAB have understandably be looking for more market share by suggesting people who live in New Zealand should bet in New Zealand, which actually makes a bit of sense. But you have been extrapolating your relationships and building closer relationships with Sportsbet and other and other wagering providers in Australia. How do those two things sit together if they want everybody to bet at home, but you are getting into partnerships with people overseas?
I think it's quite simple. There are contracts that we set up in Australia with Australian wagering operators, and we've got about 90% of that market. Bet365 are nearly finalised, and there's a number of other operators, the smaller operators in Australia, that we're starting to talk to now. And those contracts will be finalised over the coming months. In terms of the TAB's role, TAB NZ's role is selling bets in the New Zealand market. So,
but let's say someone says, for example, Mick Guerin's got a Sportsbet account, he had a bet in Sportsbet in Australia. Wouldn't it be better for the industry if that money was bet in New Zealand?
Yeah, of course, any bet taken in New Zealand gives us a return of in excess of 6 cents on the dollar versus 3 cents of the dollar from an international wagering operator. So yes, it's far better, and TAB's role is to drive the performance of the TAB to push more New Zealanders into the three codes.
It's their job to bid for my business, not yours?
Correct.
Okay. I want to ask you about something really important, close to the hearts of myself as a racehorse owner, but even more so Emily, because she's a horse lover and plenty of people who watch this show. Racehorses, when they retire, sometimes have nowhere to go. People don't like that. The public don't like the thought of what can happen to them in some of those circumstances. What are we doing to make sure they've got somewhere to go in the future?
So one of the key aspects of that question is around traceability. We're starting to get a better handle. I think if you had said to me 2 years ago, what does our data look like? We probably had returns from 600 owners with 600 horses. As of last week, we have returns from 6,500 horses, and it's starting to give us a better view on where these horses are going after racing. And it's a mix of breeding, there's a mix of event horses, there's retraining for polo, retraining for equestrian events, and we are seeing the greater majority of those horses transition to casual riding.
So what can you do to help with it? NZTR, not you personally, but
so
NZTR, what can you do?
We've got Gina Schick, who's doing a fantastic job with Event Stars in building out a retraining network. So in the next 2 weeks, we're going to put out to the industry expressions of interest to develop a retraining network with Gina and NZTR. So we have got people out there in industry assisting us retraining horses for the markets that we're starting to identify in terms of...
So that's where the funding is going?
Some of that funding, some of the funding go there. Resources into the traceability, partnerships with pony clubs and horse riding clubs. So building out those networks. NZTR, I suppose if you had a long-term view, we set these networks up to when a horse does retire into these partnerships that we open up, and it gives a pathway for an owner or a trainer to say, here's where I'd like to send my horse. And we want to make that easier for people.
There's been plenty of debate about the whip as well. What's the progress with that in recent times?
So we've been talking to the Jockeys Association in the last 6 weeks, and there is a proposed rule change out with our sector groups and clubs at the moment that are recommending a change in the whip use from the 100 to the winning post, removing that ability for a jockey to use it in consecutive strides and moving to non-consecutive. And I'd have to compliment the jockeys. If we look over the last 3 or 4 years, the jockeys have done a terrific job in, changing their ways in terms of whip use. But the enlightening fact for us was when we did the data for for December, January last year, and we looked at the number of times the first 4 place getters over the line in the last 100 were using the whip. It was running at about 7.4%. So you could see that we haven't got jockeys anymore doing what they were doing may have been 10 or 20 years ago or 5 years ago. They are adapting, so we're putting that rule change out there. It's got good support from the Jockeys Association, and we're hoping we get the feedback from our other participants to support that change and move on.
Put it in as bluntly as possible. Do you see any, in the next couple of years, push from NZTR to ban the whip? Because I'm hoping not, but what do you want?
I think a jockey has to carry a whip, and for safety purposes, for steering purposes, and when you talk to the jockeys, we've got to listen to the jockeys, because ultimately they're the ones that their health and safety is paramount, the guiding of the horse is paramount, and the professional conduct of our race meetings. It all hinges on those 3 things in my view.
One of the things you and Cameron mentioned to us a couple of months ago, Bernard, was education of people inside the industry, getting people into the industry, then educating them how to make this a career for themselves. How do NZTR educate people in the industry if they're all self-employed, working under other self-employed people?
So in simple terms, we in the next 3 weeks we'll have out to the industry a consultation document on the restructure of our licensing policy, which in the past has been not properly documented in terms of what standards trainers have to meet, new trainers coming into the system, what's some training that we want new trainers to go through, and it's about also partnering with the right education facilities, which we probably have done in the past but haven't done, I would have thought, appropriately. So we need a step change in that space, and the board are committed to finding a way to partner with the right organisations to deliver training to our existing cohort of trainers, jockeys, owners, stable hands and track riders, and also a recruitment pathway program, because we haven't articulated that properly. Where do you go on our web? We haven't got anything on our website to say, how do you want to be a track rider? How do you want to be a jockey, a trainer? So we've got a lot of work to do in that space to restructure and provide the right communication networks to people who want to get engaged outside of the racing community. We've got a big job in there.
There's a lot going on.
That's probably about it. 30 seconds to go, Michael.
There's a lot going on, mate. We appreciate you taking the time. But if people want to know more, if they want to find out what's going on, because we can't have you on the show every week, where's the best place for them to find out where their industry's going? Like, for example, the jumps racing. I have people ringing me worried about this, Bernard. How can they keep informed enough to know what's going on with something which powers their life?
Well, I do a Facebook live session every month, and I get some really good questions come through. So I'd encourage people to get on Facebook, shoot questions to us. We have a moderator that will provide, if they want the answer quickly, we'll provide it to them. Otherwise, I'll provide that on a monthly basis. But I've got an email address, bernard.saundry@nztr.co.nz. I've got a phone number, and we're taking phone calls every day. You know, there's 300 calls a day through our registration, our bureau, right across the business, and we're there to communicate. We understand we've got a level of service that we have to provide the industry. They are our customers, so it's really important we service our customers.
A big thank you to you, Bernard, Michael, for your company this evening. Great to have you on the show, and we'll be back next week, 8 p.m.